Hello, good morning. Sorry for the delay. There were some technical difficulties with Zoom this morning. Not Zoom, what do you call it? StreamYard. Hope all are well. Just grabbing my sage. Hello, good morning. Nice to see you, Leanne. How are you? Hi, Chandrika. Hi, Michelle. Sorry, I was having technical issues there this morning. My computer needed an update, and then StreamYard didn't want to work. So I'm a few minutes late. Apologies. Hi, Amma. Hi, Lori. Hi, Angie. Hi, Erica. Hi, Michelle. Hi, Summer. How is everyone today? Happy Friday, TGIF. Happy 4th of July to everybody. Enjoying the day off on your patio. That sounds nice. How is everybody? Do you guys sleep well? Just lighting my sage like I normally do. Anybody have anything interesting to share today? It's good to see you all. We had a fun chat with Adriana and Zach yesterday. That was a good one. Enjoyed that very much. What have you guys been up to? I have no planned chat for today. I'm just just holding the space. We have some interesting lost soul rescues to do today. Does anybody remember who Diane Fossey is? Anybody remember Diane Fossey? I'm adding her to the list today. She popped up in a dream that I had, and it's really weird, actually. Michelle knows. Michelle remembers who Diane Fossey is. Isn't it strange that she would pop up in a dream? I'm going to clear her today. I don't think she's crossed over. Thank you, Charisse. I very much enjoyed the chat with Adriana yesterday. Nice to see you, Adriana. She was the gorilla lady. Yeah. Yep. She was murdered by poachers, and so were several of her gorillas. So I think actually, for those of you who may not remember, we're showing our age here. Because what year did this happen? Hang on, let me actually Google her and find out. 1985. And she passed away December 26th in the Volcanoes National Park. I just feel it's very strange that she would pop up into a dream. She died like right after I was born. It was very odd that she would pop up into my head. So I'm like, all right, let's check her. I'm just curious. Just curious as to why she popped up into my head of all people. Michelle was 16. I was 6 months old. So yeah. We're showing our age if you can remember who Diane Fossey is. I'm actually really curious to see whether or not she's crossed over. I imagine she's not. I mean, who knows? Maybe it was just a very random dream, but I don't think my dreams are random. In fact, I don't usually remember my dreams. She's probably not. So let's see what happens. I actually had one person message me and saying, like, "If I were to pay in advance for my own lost soul rescue, can I do that?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, just the saying, like, even if I die 20 years from now, can I, like, put it in my will that somebody does a lost soul rescue for me?" And I was like, why would you think you're gonna be stuck?" Like, most of the time, the reason people get stuck is because they either die tragically in some kind of an accident and they get stuck in a death loop, or because of confusion or fear. But the whole point is that most of us are educated enough to not have fear about the afterlife. So if you're not afraid of what's coming, then generally your vibration is pretty high and it makes it easier to cross over. This is why death doulas are so important. Lori says, I remember hearing about that. I'm old. You're only as old as you feel, Lori. I bet you she is probably still trying to protect her gorillas. Very sad story. So, yeah, for those of you who will join us with Lost Soul Rescue today, I'm putting her on the list. Cherie says, if I'm ever earthbound, I know who I'll go bother. I don't think most of you guys have to worry about that. I don't think anybody has to worry about that, but I don't think that has to be a concern. Although I can understand why somebody would want to put it in their will just in case. To be like, I remember saying this to Zach too. I was like, Zach, it's like people are gonna put it in their will that they get a lost soul rescue. And he goes, humans are weird. Yes, we are. We are definitely. Didn't somebody have a question about timelines? I thought I saw a minute ago. Can you explain timelines a bit more? That's a good question, Katie. There we go. I found it. What would you like to know about timelines, just out of curiosity? Because it's quite a broad subject. Nathalie said, this is what I told Mike the death doula about the importance of her work. Yes, Mikey's amazing. Her Facebook page was hacked and she needs rebuild from scratch. Seriously? No way. Mikey's page got stolen? I'm checking right now. She was a guest on my podcast not too long ago. She's lovely, hey? It says that maybe it's her Instagram or something that got hacked, because it seems like she's still posting on her Facebook page. Was it her Facebook page that got hacked? Yeah, that's what you're saying. Interesting. Hi, Chantal. Nice to see you, darling. Hi, Carolyn. Nice to see you as well. We're talking about Mikey the death doula. Apparently her page got stolen. She's having to start over from scratch. What? That is so not cool. I'll message her and see if there's a way that I can help. I had a reading with Adriana a month ago and she said I needed to clear a few more things before I can leave. Does this mean it has to be something traumatic? Usually when it's unfinished business, which is usually some kind of a lesson of some sort, whether it's forgiving somebody or coming to terms and accepting something or trying to get, you know, trying to think of what, honestly, forgiveness and acceptance are the two biggest ones. There's a lot of release that needs to occur for people because it's like baggage. You know, you can't take your baggage with you. Not doom or gloom here, but anyone listen to Pamela Dawn's? Saw a post about July predictions and watching, I said, not in my timeline. I have, after last year, I have completely turned away from any future predictions because I got egg on my face from the last one. And I'm like, nope. Anything that's future is the only possibility I'm willing to entertain are future positive timelines. Because no, there even the soul guides have no idea what's gonna happen. There's way too many variables, way too many available timelines. Bunch of fake pages pretending to be you. That's normal. That's normal for everybody. Facebook sucks. Like, I'm just saying, like, Facebook is one of the worst organizations in the world for scammers, and they do absolutely nothing about it. In fact, I'm pretty sure Facebook actually encourages scams. Even the advertisements that pop up are often scams that are actually completely hacked or just complete bullshit. Thank you for sharing the new page for Mikey. I'll share some of her stuff for her, and hopefully that'll grow her page a little better. It sucks though when you've worked for years and had something be taken from you. Laura Cleary, she's a comedian. Laura Cleary also lost her page and she got it back. So it's possible that she might be able to get it back. So fingers crossed for her. Cricket says, okay, I can handle that. Yeah, just a bit of acceptance and forgiveness. What? That's not too difficult, is it? Letting go some baggage. I think the forgiveness is the hardest aspect, though, personally. I mean, yeah, we can accept our situation, but to forgive people that really put us into that situation is the next level. I'd love to see if we can get Mikey back on the podcast. Sure, I'll invite her back on. She and I still chat on occasion. I've been commenting on her stuff quite a bit. Now I'm surprised that her page got hacked. Charisma says forgiveness is so hard. Yeah. Honestly, it's probably one of the most challenging things we have to do, is to forgive people that have done us wrong. Especially when we didn't deserve it. Like, it's one thing if karma kind of gives you a slap for something you did, but if you've done absolutely nothing wrong and somebody does something really awful to you, it's very challenging to forgive it and to accept the situation for what it is. But in most cases, it's some sort of either a learning situation or a karmic balancing situation. Poor Loy is dealing with someone who is harassing her. I love Loy, I really do. She needs to learn, though, to not give attention to negativity. Because look what happened. She made another post and that one got reported too. You can't deal with trolls in any other way but to ignore them. If you try to call them out, you're giving them energy. You're giving them your attention. That is what they want. Even if you don't know who it is, if you don't say anything, you just say, whatever. Walk away. There she is. Hi, Loy. We got to stop feeding the trolls, Loy. Trolls have an insatiable appetite. It never stops. So this is the problem. When you start talking to the trolls, when you start making posts about it, that will actually feed them and give them the attention that they wanted in the first place. It's probably somebody that's got beasties. This is funny thing about it, right? Is that I actually see this quite often where people will message me for a clearing and say, hey, somebody is doing spell work on me. Somebody is doing, sending me bad juju. Somebody is doing curses on me. And then I look into it and sure enough, there are. But it's actually goes both ways where they're both giving each other curses and spells. So it's kind of funny how very much tit for tat things can be, especially on social media. They're probably an NPC anyway, Michelle says. Marcella says, I find it harder to forgive myself than others. I'm with you on that. Because it's easy to forgive other people, in my opinion. Most of them are idiots. Like the ones that really screw you over, it wasn't a smart move. You know what I mean? Like that's why they're willing to screw people over in the first place. So, you got to stop giving people your attention if they don't deserve it. If they do you wrong, you just say, okay, bye. I'll walk away from anybody. I walked away from my own mother for 4 months. It's a long story, but she had it coming. If people treat you like shit, that is self-respect right there to walk away. Don't give them your attention, because when you do that, you give them the satisfaction. That's what they wanted. They wanted to rile you up and upset you. Michelle says, what do you think about mirrors, Lara? I took a lot of mirrors out of my house, actually, especially the ones in my bedroom. Mirrors or doorways. Yeah, Michelle, I have no mirrors in my bedroom either. I take them down. Because honestly, mirrors are doorways. If you're not really careful, who knows what could be peeking through them. I have gotten slightly paranoid learning about these things. Lois is my own mother too, has been blocked going on 4 years now. See, setting boundaries. You know how to do it. It's honestly, sometimes walking away from family is one of the most profound and important things you can do. Because a lot of times the reason they're family in the first place is because you had karmic shit to work out. If you can forgive them and walk away, you release yourself from all that karma. Chantal says, it's been a tough ride for me. I had to block my own parents. They just don't respect boundaries and they're so negative. I told my mom the other day, if she doesn't stop watching the news, I'm going to stop clearing her. Like, if you don't stop watching the shitty fucking news, then whatever beasties you get from it, you're on your own. Like, it's ridiculous though to be like it. It just reminds me of somebody that they get themselves into a messy situation by literally walking into the messy situation willingly, and then they're like, save me from the messy situation I put myself into. And it's like, no, you figured it out. Enough is enough. You got to set boundaries sometimes. Sarek said, I walked away from my father and have forgiven him from afar. It's a very powerful thing to do. Anita says we need to prune our family tree more often. Just keep in mind that one of the reasons why they became family in the first place, especially if you've had a complicated or a struggling relationship with them the whole time, like, it just goes to show that's karmic stuff you're working out. So, it's obviously not what we would want to do, but at the same time, sometimes it's the best thing for us to do. To each their own, though, if somebody feels inclined to work things out after a period of, being estranged, then that's beautiful at the same time. Everybody's situation is different. Cricket said, my father disowned me when I was 17 and pregnant. I did forgive him many years later. See, things like that, I completely understand why you would want to walk away. And something like that too, like you had a prenatal contract for things like that. Pregnancy, that is a part of your soul plan. How ironic that so many people end up being estranged and having all kinds of drama happening over having children, but at the same time, that is a prenatal contract. You made that decision. That was part of your life plan. So for people to judge your life plan that you chose, that they probably even knew about before you incarnated in the first place, they just forgot. Vanya says, Jesus said turn the other cheek, but he didn't say go back for more. Well, there you go. And for star seeds especially, I see what Ray said, but I read what kind of star seeds are we, and then trying to heal the world, but we neglect our own family. I decided to forgive them and just understand where they're at in their evolution. Yeah, but sometimes family, like, you have no idea why they're family in the first place. This is why learning your Akashic record and finding out why things are the way they are is such a profound thing that you can do, to have context on all of your relationships. Because it could be that somebody in your life that is, you've been fighting with your whole life, there could have been something that they did, that you both did to each other in a previous incarnation, and you're trying to work that out. But just be aware that if somebody murders somebody, okay, let's just say that you get murdered by someone, how do you think in most cases that gets repaid? Most people don't think about that. It's not an eye for an eye situation where, okay, he killed me last time. Now it's my turn. I get to do the deal. Now it's my turn. I'm going to get him. No, because that creates a wheel of karma where you're both just killing each other repeatedly. I'll kill you, you kill me. I kill you, you kill me. And until we start working shit out. And then eventually we're like, all right, I've had enough of the murder, had enough of dying. So how can we work this out? And they're like, All right, well, how about you get born into the same fucking family? You get to be siblings. Or actually, she'll be your mom, and then you'll be the daughter, and then you're gonna have a huge fight and exchange, you know what I mean? Have an estranged relationship your whole life, and then you're meant to forgive each other and accept each other for who they are. And then you're no longer stuck with that person in that wheel of karma, because forgiveness and acceptance are the most important aspects of it. But if this is somebody who is not learning the lesson, somebody who is not inclined to be like, okay, I'm going to give, instead of abusing you, I'm going to love you and nurture you. But it's difficult to do that after you've had, several incarnations of doing harm to this person. Now they're supposed to do love and affection. And then you wonder why you're born with a mother that has no affection for you whatsoever. A mother that would as easily just be like, go away. Who doesn't even give a rat's ass about you a little bit. And then you wonder why you have that sort of relationship, and you start blaming yourself, going, why doesn't my mother love me? And then it turns out, sure enough, she murdered you in a past life, and you're still working shit out. And you've been beating yourself up that whole incarnation going, why wasn't I lovable? This is the kind of shit that we humans are dealing with. We deal with it all the time. Or it could be a spouse. It could be somebody that, when you meet them, everything seems great. And then as soon as you're married, everything goes to shit and they start being abusive again. And then you look at your Akashic record and you find out, oh yeah, I've been married to this man 4 times and he's abused me every single time. And I was just expecting it to be different this time, but it wasn't, because he's not working on himself. The same kind of shit. It happens all the time. We see this is not a rare occurrence. This is how it often unfolds for people. And the more pain that you experienced in a certain relationship in the past, the more pain you're probably going to experience in that relationship in the present, because all of that shit keeps repeating. And how many of us have abandonment issues? How many of us don't really understand why we are the way we are? And then it turns out this isn't the first time this shit has happened. So learning your Akashic record, learning your soul history is one of the most important things that I could recommend to anybody for that reason. And, the more it resonates, the more you're able to really understand why these things occurred the way they did in the past. The more you and your personality, your life, your presence, your path, everything makes more sense. And as RJ just perfectly just put, forgiveness is for you, not them. Exactly. You're releasing yourself from that wheel of karma. If they're not doing the lesson, if they haven't released themselves from that wheel of karma, it has nothing to do with you. Let them work it out with somebody else. It's not your fucking problem. The shit gets me emotional, as you can tell, because how many people are dealing with this? How many people are beating themselves up with abandonment issues and blaming themselves because they felt they weren't good enough? And then you find out that the person that you've been pining over, or the person that you've been wanting love from, isn't even capable of loving themselves, let alone somebody else. So it does help quite a lot. And honestly, like Adriana for my birthday, Adriana was like, what do you want to do for your birthday? And I was like, can I have an Akashic record session? And she's like, yeah, sure. So I sat down with Adriana for my 40th birthday, and I asked about every major relationship I've had in my entire life. And they all made so much more sense. It put so much context into my life that now I don't even look at my previous relationships the way I used to. In fact, there was a lot of resentment and frustration that I had towards certain people in my life. And those are the people that I wanted to ask about most. If this is somebody that I have resentment towards because they really screwed me over or broke my heart or let me down to the extreme, that is why I'm like, okay, I need some context here. I need to understand why this made me as emotional as it did. And sure enough, I find out that it's just a repeated pattern. The exact same shit. They pulled the same crap that they did in this lifetime as they did in the last lifetime. So it's just interesting how much people don't change. You guys say we have a memory wipe, and obviously we do. But, you'd think with a memory wipe, we would change in some way. But people don't really change from incarnation to incarnation. They're very much the same. And this makes me feel bad for the soul guides, I must say. Can you imagine being, a guide to somebody and having to watch them live the same life over and over and over and over again because they're not changing? How many times I've actually asked about this because I've asked the soul guides because I'm chatting with your soul guides when I'm doing clearings. And so I ask, like, how many times has this person done this? And they're like, oh, probably 10. It's like Groundhog Day. For the soul guides, it is. It's Groundhog Day because they're watching the same shit unfold over and over again. It might have different actors. They're in different vessels this time, but it's the same shit, different incarnation. Exactly. So, learning what you've got in your record helps you get off the wheel. Shelly said, I feel bad for the soul guides too. Could you imagine seeing the same shit over and over again? Like, I'm sorry, Charlie. I feel like I have to apologize to my own soul guide here. Be like, because I just know I've repeated some really annoying patterns in my life. I'm probably still repeating one right now. But, old habits die hard. But there's probably a reason why we like what we like and why we have the vices that we have and why we have the relationships that we have and why we tolerate the shit that we tolerate, even though we shouldn't be. Ma said, this is my paternal grandmother's story and my maternal grandfather's story too. Yep. Michelle says, I'm not going to feel bad about cannabis. Me neither. Nope. Although I have noticed that it does help if I push it back further in the day. I get more shit done that way. So do we always have the same soul guides? Often we do, yeah. Not every time. I'm guessing that sometimes that's why they change things up. They're like, well, Charlie, you had your go. She didn't change shit. So I guess you're going to have to go with somebody else next time. Shelly says we are slow learners. Yes, that's funny. Well, Dolores would say an old soul is a slow learner. And that really cracked me up the first time I heard that. So an old soul is repeating the same pattern over and over. And some people were like, well, what if all souls are the same age? How come you get some souls that are way more advanced? Well, because they're not repeating patterns as often as others are. And they're not as stuck. Sometimes if you get stuck for thousands of years as an earthbound, you don't think that messes with your soul evolution? Of course it does. It slows you down. Lots of things slow you down. Lacking forgiveness will slow down your soul growth. My soul guys didn't want to incarnate on Earth with me. It's too heavy for them. We definitely drew the short straw, didn't we, Michelle? I can't really say that, though, because I know they told me I was a starseed recruiter. I was talking you guys into coming down here with me. So thank you very much. That's why I had to come down. I'm like, well, shit, I talked so many people into coming down here. I guess I got to go too. I can't just send all of you down there and then not go down there myself. So we're all in the thick of it together now. But think about how much this planet has already changed in the last, 10 years alone? Imagine how it's going to be in the next 10 years. Why do you think starseeds are nearly always alone? Well, there you go, Daniel Jackson. Because we are very much misunderstood. And honestly, this planet, there's a lot more Earth seeds than there are star seeds. And just because you see star seeds everywhere doesn't mean they are everywhere. In fact, yeah, there's millions of star seeds, but we tend to kind of find each other. It's the vibration. But this is also why in certain areas, why people are going to look at you like you're completely nuts and you're so different to them. That's how I was in high school. I got bullied so bad in high school. Nobody understood me. So this is just one of those things where I've always joked, I feel like a Viking, what do you call it? A Vulcan in a world full of Klingons. Like, it's a nerdy thing to say, but it's true. Angie says, I'm labeled the crazy one. Yep, pretty normal. It's the vibe we give off. Exactly, Ray. Amanda says, in Michael Newton's book, it's mentioned that new souls are always being created, that we are not all the same age. That'd be a good question for one of the soul guys, because this is the problem with conflicting information down here. One person will say one thing and another person says something completely different. If I were to think of it myself and just come up with my own opinion on it, I would imagine that time doesn't exist. So technically, since time doesn't exist, everything is happening simultaneously. So it makes sense that everything is the same age. But age is not determined by time. Age is actually determined by experience on the other side. Since time doesn't exist, your soul age is not how long you've been around doing soul stuff. It's how experienced you are. So if you shift it that way, it comes out completely different. So I can see why they would say we are all the same age from this perspective, because time doesn't exist. But no, we are all not the same experience level. You can tell already. In fact, there was a really interesting discussion on Gaia. I can't remember who it was that was giving the discussion. It was on the Gaia network, where he was explaining the consciousness levels of the different souls and how, like, you get the baseline consciousness, which is like 2D. Baseline consciousness is like the consciousness of rocks and plants and stuff. So that's like the base level consciousness. That's the lowest level of consciousness, 2D consciousness. Then they say 3D consciousness was originally reserved for the animal kingdom. So 3D consciousness, the main focus of 3D consciousness is, can I eat it? Can it eat me? Or can I mate with it? That is the three things that somebody from a 3D consciousness would mainly focus on. That is what animals are meant to be mostly focused on. Can I eat it? Can it eat me? And can I mate with it? 4D consciousness, they've argued that it's kind of like, who am I? Asking yourself, who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? What is my purpose? That is a level 4 consciousness. Mira says, I object. Plants are not only sentient, but highly evolved. You know, everybody is welcome to believe whatever they want. I'm just explaining what this guy was explaining. So 4D consciousness, he argued, is that you would have the questions in your head of, okay, who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? How did I come to be? And a 5th level consciousness, they argue about understanding that everything is consciousness, that everything is alive and conscious, even like your phone. Everything, even though it may be an inanimate object, it still has a consciousness attached to it. So 5D consciousness is understanding that, you know, everything is alive and sentient. And they said, so I think he said it was 6D consciousness or whatever, extending above that, that you realize that you are God. That you are that consciousness that resides in all existence. So where would you say most people fall in line with that? Would you say most people you meet walking around on the street realize they are God? Most of them do not. Most of them do not know that they are God. I know it because I've taken a lot of psychedelics and I had to come to terms with that. That's one of the most important things you learn from taking psychedelics. I'm just saying, is that everything is alive in consciousness. Everything has a consciousness that resides within it, and you are that same consciousness. And I imagine probably 2%, exactly, Amelia. Maybe up to 5% of the planet might know that, but not more than that. So how many people are even enough to question, why am I here? Who am I? What is my purpose? Do you think most humans even ask that question? No, most humans are still wondering, can I eat it? Or do I have to kill it? Or can I mate with it? You end up meeting a lot of people in the world and you're just like, are we on the same level of understanding and consciousness? Because if you walk around spring break, I guarantee most of them are just looking for something to, you know, something to eat or mate with. A lot of humans still have that 3D animalistic consciousness. So, you know, it's not anything against those people. They're welcome to be at their level of whatever, you know, but trying to tell them that they're God, good luck. If they're focused on, you know, just getting laid, good luck explaining to them that they're God. They're working their way up to that. But right now they're having fun wearing their beer hats and going to football games. Like, just let them be their thing. Just do whatever. If they're not ready for it, that's fine. You can't strap them to a chair and make them watch documentaries. They're not gonna, it's not gonna process. It's not gonna sink in because they're still working their way up to that. Some of you came in here with a 6D consciousness. Some of you came in here knowing that you were God because you were already aware of that in a previous incarnation. That is the lesson that you have already learned. This is something that you are already taught by your galactic brothers and sisters. So coming here and having to incarnate with a bunch of people who are just, I mean, still doing the baseline shit, it's frustrating. It's a little disheartening trying to educate them as well. Sometimes you just want to shake them and be like, you're God, pay attention. But nobody wants to listen to that shit. They're like, okay, you're nuts, go smoke another one. They're not ready for it yet. My sister visited our Muggle cousins once and came back saying that they are at the level of breeding, eating, and breeding and eating, and that is it. Yeah, see? So everybody's welcome to their own opinions on this, you know, but at the same time, you wonder why you don't fit in. You have a very different level of consciousness than most of the people that exist on this planet. Most of them are just existing. They're not thriving. They're not trying to evolve. They're just existing. And many of them are struggling just to keep their head above water, so to speak. So it's like, it's one of those things where how are you expecting people to evolve their consciousness if they are in fight or flight mode their entire life? If they're stuck in survival mode and the only 3 chakras that are working is their base, their root, and their solar plexus, you understand why they're thinking with their stomachs and they're something else. The only thing they care about is those 3 bottom chakras. We'll put it that way. These chakras don't even come online until you start asking those big questions. So I bet you if you were to walk around in public and have a good view at everybody's chakras, most of them are going to have very overactive lower chakras. And these are going to be switched off. Why? Because if you're in survival mode, that is exactly how it goes. The more you learn about yourself, the more you see the difference between you and others. We're all human, right? We all decide to take a human vessel. You may not be human on the soul level. You might be Andromedan or Arcturian or Pleiadian or whatever you are on a soul level, but we all decided to take a human vessel, so we're all in it now. we're all stuck down here now. So we may as well make the most of it, right? That's the most important thing for starseeds. And I'm talking about the new starseeds, by the way. I'm not talking about the veterans. But the new starseeds, you're just here to have an experience. Enjoy it. Treat it like you're on a vacation on a hazard, like it's like an adventure island. That's what this planet is. It's a bit hazardous, a bit risky. Yeah, but I mean, nobody gets out of here alive anyway. So you may as well just enjoy it. Luke says, what chakra would you say you live out of? Your heart? Probably my throat. My heart and my throat are my most active chakras. We'll put it that way. If you go and get Kirlian photography, you can kind of see what colors it looks like. I had Kirlian photography. I wonder if I have it on here still. Probably take me too long to find it. My chakra was, I should say, my auric field was all green. Green with a little bit of gold in there. So yeah, I have an overactive heart and throat chakra. People function from their lower chakras because the lower chakras are over sex, money, power, and control. 100%. Yep. Love is the key to everything, T. That's what my soul guides told me during my first astral projection experience 13 years ago. That was the last thing they said to me. Love is the key to everything. So, yep, that is the reason why many of us are here. We just love Gaia that much, or we just wanted to help. Patrick says I'm an OG starseed. Same here, Patrick. Uh-huh. Mira says energy flows where attention goes. Us watching Lara is money. Well, there you go. Wouldn't that be nice? Thank you, Beverly. Does anybody have any questions that we're just chit-chatting today? I always love chit-chatting and hanging out with you guys, but I realize there's 104 people watching right now. Is there anybody that has an important question, or are we just sitting here sipping tea and chit-chatting? Cricket says, I am an Engen. Yes, we love the Engen, don't we? The Viking Pleiadians. Does anybody have any questions about anything since we're just chit-chatting? Or are we just enjoying the conversation about starseeds and consciousness levels today? Because that is kind of fun to talk about. We got the balance, don't we? We're balancing things out on this planet. How's the Lost Soul Rescue going? Very well, thank you. Today is our last, our last Lost Soul Rescue for students only. I haven't been posting in the last 4 weeks because we've been doing a lot of chatting. We've been doing a lot of talking during our Lost Soul Rescues, and there's a lot of teaching going on. So they haven't been the normal Lost Soul Rescues that we do. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, we do have a slightly famous person we're going to try and cross over today. Not somebody from Hollywood. What's a good way to clear your bed? Wasn't really covered in psychic protection course. Same way that you clear everything else. Sea salt and sage. Smudge your bed. You can take your bedding, throw it in the wash with just a 1/4 cup of sea salt. I add a good tablespoon at least to every laundry, you know what I mean? Every load of laundry that I do, I just add a bit of sea salt to it. Especially if you work in a place where you get a lot of bad juju, like a hospital or something like that. You want to make sure that as soon as you get home, that's the first thing you do is you leave your shoes by the door, preferably outside even. You strip at the door. I know how that sounds, but you don't want to be bingo dabbing all that bad juju around your house. So you throw that straight in the wash with at least a good heavy tablespoon of sea salt. You can also smudge your bed. You can take sea salt and water and spritz it around. That's the best thing to do for dog beds. If you have a dog bed, I highly recommend, or a cat bed, or something that your pet often spends a lot of time in, take sea salt and mix it with water and spray it around their bed. That helps a lot with the astral parasites. There's a lot of astral parasites on beds. That's probably the most common place we find them, especially if you are somebody who does not clean your pillow. Just saying, like, the pillow is the most infested place for astral parasites. And a lot of people don't even wash their pillows. So make sure that you're keeping an eye on that. Shelly said, I planted sage yesterday. Lovely. I found some purple sage that I'm growing now, actually. Do you ever see children with attachments, or is that more rare? Yes, we do. It is more rare to see children with attachments because children have a naturally high frequency. Their vibration is naturally higher. And so they are less susceptible to attacks because, as we've mentioned a million times, a high vibration is a natural deterrent because your vibration has to match for you guys to connect like that. So if your vibration is down here because you've been stressing about work or money or relationship shit, that is when you're making yourself more vulnerable. If you can manage to keep your vibration high despite all of that going on, then you're untouchable. So children in most cases are untouchable. The only time that they are not is when they've experienced some form of abuse or trauma. So abuse and trauma, or some kind of like it could even just be an accident. It could be an incident. It could be an illness where they are injured, and that will also lower their vibration to the point where, you know, these things happen. I found a child who was attacked since birth. In fact, she was even dropped by her doctor the minute she was born too, and she broke a bone when she fell. So can you imagine the very first thing you experience when you come out of your own mom's womb is falling to the ground and getting injured? Well, she had severe psychic attacks pretty much from that moment onward. So the doctor messed up by dropping her, but at that moment she was injured, her vibration got lowered, and as an infant, she was dealing with psychic attacks, and they never let her go. They wouldn't let her get her vibration back up to the point where she would normally be, like bouncing all that stuff off. So that poor youngster was 14 by the time we got to do a clearing on her. And the trauma from the injury, being born, like literally having that much pain upon your very first moments here on earth, like you can imagine how much that traumatized her. So these sort of things do create a vulnerability that most children do not have. They probably did, Chantal. She was a very, very powerful starseed. And sometimes when you're a very powerful starseed, it's like giving birth to a bright light. Okay, I'm just saying. Like some of these starseeds are immensely powerful, and you may not be able to see it physically, but their vibration is massive. And the unfortunate thing is that even if somebody has a very strong, beautiful, bright light, if their vibration goes down, they can tap into that. So I hate to say it, but starseeds, you know how vampires, they always talk about how certain blood tastes better than others? I know how morbid that sounds, but they even talk about that in the books and movies. It's exactly like that. Their energy is tastier to entities because it's more high vibration. It's more powerful. So there are a lot of children who are born into, situations where they are attacked immediately upon getting here, unfortunately. And some of them are even attacked while they're in the womb. Their mother will be attacked while they're, still in the womb. And so that usually ends up with children who are dealing with extreme psychosis. I mean, these are children who are, having rage fits at age 10, and they don't understand why they can't control their emotions. That's the sort of children that we end up doing clearings on. And yeah, people book clearings for children all the time, and we often find there's hardly anything on them. Like if people are getting a family clearing and because we offer a deal on family clearings where you can get 4 clearings for $333, which would normally be $400, so you get $70 off. And a lot of people for that, they will clear the husband and the wife and then the 2 kids. Or they'll clear, the husband and wife and then one of the grandparents and then 1 child. And you'll always notice in those situations, the children are the cleanest ones. They have the cleanest reports in most cases. In fact, a lot of the children are even sovereign anyway, which is why if you notice you book a clearing with me, I just clear all the children in the house anyway. I'm not going to, if a parent books a clearing for themselves, and then there's 2 children in the house and they're dealing with level 1s and you didn't book a clearing for the children, of course I'm going to clear the children anyway. I don't get rid of all the extra stuff. I don't go into their past life records and all of their soul history and all of that and clear all that extra stuff. So that is why when somebody is curious whether or not their children have some past life stuff, they'll do a full clearing on their children. And yeah, children do end up having past life stuff that they bring with them. But what's interesting? We have noticed that there's a lot of contracts that they're not activated yet. It's like a dark contract will they get activated at a certain age, where we'll find a dormant contract. Like let's say it's a 10-year-old, right? And we're clearing the 10-year-old. And then we find that at age 15, they have a dark contract that would kick in. We will see that before it's even kicked in. And we're like, nope, get the fuck out of here. You're done. Nope, cleared. So we spared a lot of children some torment from their teenage years because that's where a lot of these dark contracts will kick in. All of a sudden they're a teenager and the parents are like, I don't know, they're teens, they're going crazy in their teens. And they don't even understand that, no, that child just got to a certain age and it activated certain contracts within their Akashic record. And then all of a sudden the children start acting up, or they're sneaking out or doing naughty shit or whatever it is. And you don't understand, well, okay, this child had a dark contract dealing with addiction going back 3 incarnations. So we can actually nip that shit in the bud before it even becomes a thing. So yeah, this is why it is good to check children just in case. Even if things seem to be going really well, you just never know what you're going to find. But it honestly brings me so much joy it doesn't it, Carolyn? Whenever we have a clean report, we're like, We love seeing clean reports. We're like, none of that, none of that, none of that. Nope, not even a thought form. Sweet, not even no disassociations. Oh, such a good life here. This is wonderful. Like it actually is really, it's touching to find somebody that doesn't have anything to clear. But do you know how rare that is? It's almost never. I think we found what, 5 people out of the 4,000 clearings we've done that had really, really clean contracts, or sorry, clean reports where they have like almost nothing to clear. And they were all children. They were all children. But you know what's interesting too? Most disassociations happen from childhood. If we check disassociations, right, we don't often find disassociations, which is a split from trauma, you know, in the mid 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Like those are very rare. Most disassociations happen before the age of 20. They happen before you're an adult. So it does make you wonder, like, are we just more fragile at that point? Do we process things differently? Do we hold on to that trauma more as a child? Probably. We come in here so innocent. We have, especially the star seeds. Some of you came in here with this, I'm going to help everybody. Where I'm coming in there to do a good thing. Woohoo! And as soon as they get in here, they get attacked and they get knocked down and they get, you know, sometimes even brutalized by the entities and some of the darkness that happens here and some of the low consciousness level people, I'll put it that way. You know, and then this is part of the reason why we end up carrying that trauma from childhood into our adult years and we don't even realize it's there. Mira says, as a human, brain is still forming until age 21. That might have something to do with it then. Who knows? But it is very interesting that trauma is so much more prominent. Yes, we don't have the same resources or understanding, and children can sometimes find the smallest things traumatic. Yeah, they do. Kat says, you really need to have a warrior type vibe to survive here without karma. Seriously. Or at least I don't give a fuck vibe. Like, you know, because karma a lot of times is just feelings of guilt or injustice or feelings of unworthiness or feelings of, you know, like, you owe me this, you have to make it up to me. So there's a lot of karma that we could clear ourselves. We're just not even aware that it's as big of a baggage that we're dragging along with us as it is. Kara says our brains are not actually fully developed until age 24. Is that why it bothers me so much when I see certain situations where if they're not even 25 years old yet, I'm like, you have a lot more to learn. Or is that just something that comes with age? As you get older, you look at the younger generations like, you know, I think it's the latter. That's funny. Kat says, I have a coin that says one fuck. When I'm running low on energy, I'll hand it to Jordan and we start cracking up. She's lost her one fuck. It's gone. It's been stolen. All her fucks are gone. Wow. We as humans are designed for parents, supposed to be for protection. Our parents, you know, we have a very broad spectrum of familial you know, it reminds me of like the 90s. You know, it just popped into my head. There was a commercial back in like the 80s or 90s, I think it was. They said, do you know where your children are? It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Like, nobody, like back in the 80s, 90s, like as long as you were home before 10 p.m., parents didn't even give a shit. They're just like, whatever. Did you feed yourself today? Okay, good. Did you do your clothing? Yeah, okay, good. Did you go to school? Yep, good. Okay. You know, back in the day, like we got away with murder back in the 80s and 90s. And now everybody's being a helicopter parent. They don't even want you leaving your kid home alone until they're like 16. Meanwhile, my parents would be like, we don't even have locks on our door. My parents would leave. They'd be gone for the day. Be like, look after your little sister. I'd be like 10. And they'd be like, we're going to be gone most of the day. Go look after your little sister. Don't get into trouble. So I came home when the street lights came on. Exactly. So think of how much things have changed over since that time. And how much things are continuing to change. Children used to be a lot more independent than they are now. Just saying. I think that's where I am fiercely independent. So I think that's part of it. Anita said predators are everywhere. Predators used to be all over the place back then, too. I still remember tons of people. What was that young girl who disappeared riding her bike and they found her bike in a cornfield? There's probably some people like that we could be actually checking out and seeing if they've actually crossed over or not. It happened back then. It just wasn't talked about as much as it is now. So yeah, there's quite a few people back from we should have Lost Soul Rescue from the 80s and we just check and see how many people we remembered went missing in the 80s and just check to see what's going on with them and if they've crossed over or not. We haven't even checked it, but then again, some of these cases ended up being very high profile. So it does make you wonder how messy that situation would be, like Jean-Benet Ramsey, for example, tuning in and finding out what happened there. That would be a doozy of a Lost Soul Rescue, that's for sure. So this shit happened back in the day, too. In fact, I'm sure they got away with it a lot easier back in the day than they do now. So anyway, see, that's another person I was just thinking of. These are all people that we could be checking on with Lost Soul Rescue. Because I almost guarantee a lot of these people are not crossed over. Mira says, predators are forever here. We were supposed to stick together and the neighbors used to tell your parents. Well, keep in mind that a lot of these predators are not even sovereign. These are entities that are they're like Jedi mind tricking weak-minded people into doing this shit. And a lot of these people were victims themselves, which is why they ended up so easily malleable in the first place to do this kind of shit. So there's a lot of, honestly, that is the most challenging, repetitive karmic cycle that you can find yourself in personally. Out of all the horrific life lessons that Earth has to offer, that is the most awful of them all, I think, in my opinion. But it's the most challenging to release yourself from. And I've done clearings on people that have done things like that in prison. And they were victims themselves. Every single one of them that I have checked were victims themselves. So they're just Jedi mind tricked by entities. Not to say that they don't have some sort of responsibility themselves. Of course they do at some point. There's going to be karma that comes knocking, and they're the ones that are going to have to deal with it, not the entities. Just because their vessel was hijacked, they're going to have to deal with karma now. Unsolved mysteries. Yeah, that would be, honestly, I mean, we could take just one episode of Unsolved Mysteries and turn it into a Lost Soul Rescue. This is kind of like, if I were to have a TV show, this is exactly what I would do with it, though. Somebody were to say, hey, Laura, do you want a TV show? I'd be like, all right, we're going to look for missing persons. We're going to cross over murder victims, and we're going to clear out haunted areas like mental health institutions that people like to go and do those freaky ghost tours at and shit like that. I would clear all of that out. Unsolved Mysteries was one of my favorite shows back in the day, but it's not exactly a high vibe TV show, is it? Yep, exactly. So you guys are giving me all kinds of ideas for Lost Soul Rescues in the future. It's honestly my favorite thing that we do. Yes, Lost Soul Rescue is definitely one of the saddest things that we do. It's very emotionally jarring. In fact, I'm pretty sure every single time we've done a Lost Soul Rescue as a group, at least there's guaranteed to be somebody crying over how emotional that shit gets us. But at the same time, I can't think of anything that feels better than helping people that were attacked in this way. People that were dealing with horrific situations and are still stuck in those horrific situations. Could you imagine if some of these people that we know died horrifically are still in a death loop, still dying horrifically? The death loop is the one motivating factor. I can't even imagine how awful it must be to be reliving your own death over and over again. But to have it be a murder or some form of extreme death, Like, that is taking it to the whole next level of fucked up. Carolyn says, count me in for the TV show. I wouldn't dream of doing it without you, Carolyn. Carolyn would be the star overnight. Kat says, I used to watch Unsolved Mysteries and would cross over those who would come to me through the show. That's awesome, Kat. See? Mira says, how do you protect yourself? These are ugly entities. Well, the same way we always talk about protection. Keep the vibes high, keep the space clear. We should contact Gaia TV and pitch them your show idea. That would be cool, but I don't know. Gaia, I like Gaia, don't get me wrong, but their largest, what are they called? Their largest owner of stock is BlackRock and Vanguard. And they argue, they're like, I even called, because I spoke with somebody at Gaia about this at an event, and I was like, how come BlackRock and Vanguard are your biggest sponsors? Like, how come they own? And they're like, well, it's publicly traded stock is what they told me. It's publicly traded stock. We can't choose who's going to buy our stock. And I was like, bullshit. That is the biggest fucking cop-out I've ever heard in my life. Bullshit. It is. Gaia is completely BlackRock owned. So, yeah, and they absolutely do control what goes up there. So it does make you wonder what they're trying to control. I had Gaia TV for a long time. I watched a whole bunch of stuff on there. And now I do still have it, but I don't watch it very often. Because like I said, you have to take things with a grain of salt as well, because there's a lot of misinformation up there. I know, Jacob. I had the same thought that I might cancel my subscription when I found that out. You should have seen them. They were basically, because I went to that event in Las Vegas I told you guys about 2 years ago. That is how long I've known about that. And I've said something to them about it, and they were just like, well, we're publicly traded. That was their, well, we're publicly traded. But, I think that honestly, if you have any intuitive thought, like if say somebody who passed away a long time ago just pops into your mind, they're either visiting or they're asking for help. I've had both situations happen where somebody will pop into mind, then I'll check them. And then the guide will be like, oh yeah, they're standing right next to you. They just wanted to say hi. They're already crossed over. They just missed you, wanted to say hello. And I'm like, oh, no wonder I'm thinking of them, because they're standing right there. I didn't know that. And there's other people I've thought of where I've checked into them and they're not crossed over and they definitely needed help. So if there is, an intuitive thought to check, it's worth getting a message from them anyway, because if they're already crossed over, it's actually easier to have a conversation with them. And I get a nicer, longer message for you if they're already crossed over. So it's still worth it, you know what I mean, to get a lost soul rescue. They love it when somebody checks in to make sure that they're okay. In fact, it's kind of funny that sometimes the Earthbounds are even like, this is a thing? Like, seriously? Like, you're phoning heaven. Like, what? What is this? It's funny, especially when we check in with a student and they're like, what are you doing here? How did you, like, how am I hearing you right now? Like, they'll be in a void somewhere and then, like, their friend's voice will come in and they'll be like, huh? What? What if you know they don't want to cross over? Well, that is how I met my friend Galis. In fact, she and I had a great conversation yesterday. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, when I went to Scotland, my friend Marcella, she said basically like, hey, let's check this one woman who died of, she was killed as a witch. So we tuned in and she was not crossed over. She was in an emotional void, like a black, it was like basically like this room that she was pacing back and forth all angrily because of how badly she was treated. And when we tuned into her energy and told her what had happened and where she didn't want to cross over. She was quite adamant. She's like, no, I'm not crossing over. I'm not ready. So I told her, if you want to come with me, you can hang out with me for a couple days. You can just don't attach and take any of my energy, and you're more than welcome to hang out with me. So she did. She followed me around for a few days, and I actually saw her out of the corner of my eye a couple times, and it really made me jump. Like I saw her like over in this, you know what I mean? And it did make me jump, I must admit. So having an earthbound kind of hanging around you was a little unsettling at first. But she was very respectful. Every time we checked in to do clearings, she wasn't attached. She and I hang out for a few days. I showed her stuff. I even left things playing on the TV for her at night. I'd be like, all right, if you want to watch something here, I'll show you some of the things you've missed. And I put on some documentaries for her so she could see how things have changed over the last 400 years that she was stuck. And she really enjoyed that, actually. She did. She was watching my TV while I slept. And the next morning we got up and we were chatting about things and she wasn't ready to cross yet. And I said, that's fine. As long as you're not attaching to me, I don't care. So she did. She followed me around for a couple of days and we hung out and I explained things to her. I would just talk to her like she was a friend that was just, visiting. I would explain things to her and she was just the sweetest person ever. I just adore her. I love you, Gayless. I know she's here right now because I'm talking about her. So now she pops in. In fact, last night, Carolyn and I were doing some clearings and she's like, oh, Gayless is here. And I was chit-chatting with her and I'm like, what are you doing? What have you been up to? And she's like, oh, I've just been helping out. I keep an eye on things. I've been doing some healing work and she's been doing a lot of learning and she's also been helping a lot of people. And whenever she pops in, we're like, we're going to get some witch wounds, aren't we? And she's ready for it because sure enough, we had 3 witch wounds in a row, didn't we, yesterday, Carolyn? And she's like, I'm here. I got this. I'm helping. So she's crossed over now. She did end up crossing over a few days later. She ended up crossing over we did a clearing on a witch's prison. And there were some people that she knew there. And after those people had crossed over and she made sure they were safe, she crossed over with them. So she is crossed over now. And so that's why she's doing this work. She's basically one of our soul guides here now. And she comes in all the time for witch wounds. If you had a witch wound and we did a clearing on you, chances are she's come in and helped out during that clearing because she does. She's doing healing work. She's helping out with some of the release aspects. And it's just really beautiful that somebody, from 400 years ago is helping us do these clearings now. I just love her so much. Love you, Gayless. She's always welcome. And I've always told her that. So it was actually really cool, though, to spend a few days just kind of showing her around and explaining things to her. She was really nervous on the plane ride. she was quite scared getting up on the plane to come back to the States, but she was really excited by it. Can an earthbound sustain themselves if they don't attach and take energy? Yes, of course. I mean, if they don't take energy, what are they going to do? Die again? No, of course they can't. That would be fine without it. Do you ever come across wizard wounds, or is it mostly women? No, we don't. Just because it's called a witch wound doesn't mean that it wasn't a man that had suffered through it. Men were killed as witches too, just for the record. They didn't call them wizards. Okay, just saying. They would call it a male witch. They didn't say he was a wizard. Sometimes they would call him a warlock or something, but I'm pretty sure they were just lumped in with the witches. So no, we find men with witch wounds too, but keep in mind that most of the people that were, when men were killed as witches, they were hung, they were burned. Yes, they weren't raped. They weren't brutally, you know what I mean? Yeah, we'll put it that way. So yes, some men did suffer and have to be killed as witches, but what they experienced before they were put to death was very different to what the women were experiencing. And to be honest, a lot of the trauma that we see from the witch wounds isn't even what they experienced in their final moments. It's what they experienced when they were in jail. It's what they experienced for a year. Gayless was in prison for a year before they killed her. Can you imagine how much brutality she experienced in that 1 year that she was waiting on her trial? Like, a lot of people think, oh, they're just talking about the, you know what I mean? Like how they died, but how they lived in the final, since they were accused was no formal life. We'll put it that way. So it's not even just about how they died, it's about what they suffered while they were still on trial. And what Galus suffered, it's one of, yeah. She suffered every indecency that they offered, we'll put it that way. So many of them are, it's not just healing a witch wound of being persecuted as a witch, you're healing how badly treated you were. I mean, even cats. We found a cat with a witch wound. I didn't even think about that the animals that witches owned, I should say accused witches, because Galus wasn't a witch, she was a healer. She did not do any form of magic whatsoever. And in fact, you know what ended up leaving Galus to being killed? Singing a fucking song. She sang a song. That was it. That's all it took. That was the nail in the coffin, so to speak, and they arrested her and kept her for a year. Because one line in the song ended up matching an incident that had happened with the king in a completely different area. So, you know, it's we have a lot of history that we're starting to learn and to start to kind of come to terms with. But at the same time, like we don't even know what they truly experienced. We only have part of the story in the first place. So RJ says, what song? If you Google Galus Duncan, and many of you have already heard of her. If you've seen the show Outlander, you know, the pretty ginger lady that was in the story, they totally ruined her story, by the way, with like turning her into an actual witch and all of that nonsense that continued on. But that whole storyline with Galus Duncan, that was based on a real person, and that is the person I'm talking about. And she's my friend now. I love her so much. What year was that? If you guys want to read up on Galus, I will share. Since we're talking about you today, honey, I will I will share the she's got her own Wikipedia page. I told you, you're famous. She's got her own Wikipedia page. There she is. And just for the record, like, I just wanted to put this out there. I asked Zach, like, to validate what she looks like because I could see her out of the corner of my eye. She was absolutely drop dead gorgeous. She really was. She was stunning, stunningly beautiful. And if you look at the artwork and how they depicted her, they made her look like an evil witch in the artwork. So, yeah, anyway, that is not an accurate depiction of what she looked like. She was very beautiful. And that's probably part of the reason why they treated her the way they did. The more beautiful you were, the more jealous people were, and the more worse often you were treated as a witch. There were so many young ladies that were persecuted as witches when they were younger, too. They were only like 15, 16 years old. Jacob said, hey, Gayleth, you're welcome at my place. She's not a big fan of men right now, not to blame her for that. I think I can understand why she's not a big fan of men right now. But yeah, a lot of it was all from jealousy. Exactly. So, yeah, if you guys check out Outlander, you'll know who I'm talking about now. I liked how she was in the first season or two, but then all that stuff in Jamaica, like, they shouldn't even have put that in there. Gail says, I'm so happy Galus is your friend. Her beauty likely made men afraid and women afraid. Yeah, exactly. Yep. And she was a ginger as well. So gingers, they always got the short end of the stick, hey? Gingers, there's a reason it's one of the rarest hair colors to have in the world because so many of them were killed off. So anyway, I'm excited for the Lost Soul Rescue today, as we've been talking about Lost Souls for this whole morning. Maybe we can cross over some people with witch wounds today. So let's go look at the list. Huh, Galus? Is there a friend you want us to help out that's still stuck? Because I'd love to help them. Especially people that have been waiting 400 years to cross over. A lot of people actually gave me shit. They're like, why are you focusing so much on Scotland? And I'm like, these people have been waiting 500 years to cross over. Don't you think it's about time? Shelly says gingers are unicorns. I love gingers. Especially the ones from Outlander. Just saying. Is it true that Medusa was a beautiful black girl with braids that stunned everyone? Well, that is how the story goes. Medusa was also persecuted for her beauty. But then at the same time, keep in mind, and this is something that Kat would like me to say, Greek mythology is not accurate. It's accurate to the point where those people were real, the gods were all real, but the stories about them have been twisted and changed and made completely inaccurate from what they actually should have been. It's like a game of, what was that game, telephone back in the day, where you whisper a message to somebody and then by the time it goes around the group and everybody's whispered it, it completely changed into a different phrase. It's like that, where instead of doing that around a table, that's done around 4,000 to 6,000 years of discussion throughout history. So if you can imagine how much one little phrase changes going around a table, imagine how much that one story has changed in 4,000 to 6,000 years. So much of the Greek gods, they were Pleiadians. In fact, it was funny. Last night I was chatting with a client. I was chatting with Zach about a client soul guides. I think it was Zach. I can't remember. Anyway, no, it was Carolyn actually. And we were talking about how one of the names ended up sounding very Greek. Can't remember which medium it was. It might actually have been anyway. But anyway, there was a Pleiadian soul guide and they had a Greek name. And I was like, that's very Greek sounding. And then I realized, oh yeah, the Pleiadians, they were partially responsible for the Greek Empire in the first place. Although they're not Tagetans, although it's a long story, but most of the Greek gods are from Atlas. It's a different planet in the Pleiades. But this is why, like, I've always resonated with Greek mythology, and then it turns out that I'm literally from the Pleiades, where many of the Greeks are also from. Some of you will resonate things like that for a reason. Like if you resonate mostly with the Hindu gods, and then you find out that you're an Andromedan starseed, and you're like, oh, that's my peoples. Now it makes sense. Gail says, my husband and I seem to be attracting earthbounds. Is it possible that earthbounds are spreading the word that we are a conduit to crossing over? I have this friend who lives in New Jersey. Her nickname is Biddy. Those of you who know me very well, have known me for a very long time, you know who Biddy is. Biddy is one of my oldest friends. I've known her like 18 years. She's a manager of a store. And whenever I go to visit her, I'm always like telling her, you need to cleanse your store. You need to make sure that like you put salt in front of your doors. You got to smudge your store on occasion, etc. So I started clearing her regularly because she started getting a lot of earthbounds on her. And sure enough, guess what? She had 7 earthbounds on her the other day. And I was like, why are there so many earthbounds? And they're like, oh, word's gotten out around town that if you want to be crossed over, you just go in that store and attach to that person and you'll be crossed over within 48 hours. So no, poor Biddy is now being like constantly bombarded by earthbounds because no, they do. They tell each other, oh, you want to get crossed over? Go there. Oh, you don't want to get crossed over? Okay, well, stay away from that area because you go in there, they're going to cross you over. Like that you'd be surprised how much the earthbounds will actually be aware of all of these things. Dipti says, where's Krishna from? Andromeda, they're Andromedans. We've been working quite a lot with the Andromedans. Atlas, yes, Atlas is a very cool planet. That is in the Pleiades. This is where the Greek gods come from. They're not really gods, they're Greek aliens come from. They come from Atlas. Although a lot of the Nordic Pleiadians and the Tagetans, and there's a whole lot of other beings that come from different areas of the Pleiades. The Pleiades is massive. Emmy says maybe Biddy needs to start taking classes. I have told her this. I've lectured her about psychic protection so much. She's very spiritually inclined, but at the same time, that doesn't help the earthbounds. They're going to find a way to cross over. If they think that you're going to cross them, they're going to come to you in droves. And see my lights flickering? Did you see that? It's because you guys are talking about the Andromedans. Now they're showing off. Who called in Lord Shiva? They do. The Andromedans flicker my lights more than anybody else. That's how I know it's them. Because whenever my lights start flickering, I check, and it's always the Andromedans. Emmy says, what about Zeus, that he mated with everything that moved and breathed? That's funny. There was once a story about how Hephaestus, pardon me, I'm going to be an adult speaking right now. Hephaestus ejaculated and how it landed on the ground. And there was a god that sprung up from that. Like literally just landed on the ground and then a god sprung up from that. That's how easily it was back in the day. You could even impregnate Gaia herself back in the day, apparently. So like I said, I don't think these stories are accurate. Or that, they talked about how, who was the one? Aphrodite. Aphrodite was born from sea foam. She just was born out of sea foam. It came out of the ocean. Zeus was responsible for the sea foam. We'll put it that way. So she came out of the sea foam. So no, I don't think a lot of this is accurate. Can't the earthbounds call in the light for themselves? Yeah, they can, but if they're in a higher vibrational space. A lot of times the biggest problem with earthbounds crossing over is they're trying to do it in a low vibe space. Jessica says Aphrodite was born from the... Yes. Trying not to get reported to Facebook today. I can't say that out loud. Athena was born from his head. That was one of my favorite stories from Greek mythology, that Athena was born from a headache. But technically, she was not born from his head. You do know why she was in his head, right? He ate her mother. Okay? He tricked her. They went on. For those of you who don't know Greek mythology, he basically was like, I can transform into anything. And she's like, so can I? And he's like, well, I can transform into this. And she's like, done. And she transformed to that. And he's like, oh, I could transform into this. And she's like, okay, I could transform into that too. And she did it as well. And then sure enough, when she transformed, I think it was into a fly or something really small to show off how cool it was and how good at shape shifting she was. And he ate her. That is how the story goes. And she was pregnant when he ate her. And that is why Athena was born from his head. Okay? The reason I know this is actually part of the storyline that goes into my book. Okay, I had to study all this a lot more, and this is part of, this. I have a lot of this mentioned in my book. Yeah, it was a fly. I thought so. So this is what I say. You just never know how accurate some of these mythologies are going to be, but I don't think that was actually accurate. Sarah said, do you ever work with Lord Ganesha? So, when I tune into somebody who is a devotee of Ganesha, he is often with them. If you are somebody who is devoted to one particular deity and you call that deity in, you'd be surprised how often we actually find those people with that deity. In fact, there was one client, one of my favorite cases. We tuned into a young lady who had a normal, we'll put it this way, an Eastern name, right? So you wouldn't even notice. She had an Eastern name. And so we did the clearing on her and we found Lord Ganesha was with her. And we were like, oh, wow, this is really cool. She was sovereign, by the way. And we were like, wow, Lord Ganesha is protecting her. That is really cool. So we said hi to Lord Ganesha and we were like, just chit-chatting for a minute. And we did the rest of the clearing. We got rid of some contracts or whatever else it was for her. And then I put it in the report that Lord Ganesha was with her. And I mentioned that. And the client messaged me back going, oh my God, you have no idea. Like, she's like, I pray to him every single day. You have no idea what reading this has done for me, because it's the biggest validation. Like, she didn't mention Lord Ganesha anywhere in her submission, not at all. And then to see that, that he was actually with her and to have that validated through the soul guides, like, she was blown away. So if there is somebody that you genuinely love, and I love Lord Ganesha. He's the best. I have all of them here next to me. I've got my Lord Shiva as well. I have been looking for a Krishna. I'm looking for a Krishna statue now. But I also have a little Shringite Siddhartha. The gang is all here. I even have I have all kinds of little statues. They love it, by the way, when you have a little statue of them around. I've been wanting to gild mine. I actually got some gilding stuff and some glue. I was planning on turning that one gold, actually. Just because of how sweet. I just love Ganesha. He's got the sweetest, most beautiful energy. They're all real, by the way. Like all the Hindu gods, all of them. If there is a god that is in some sort of religious text, I guarantee that they're galactic or an ascended master of some kind. They're all real. This is why so many people believe in them in the first place. So just reading through, if there's any, like Lord Krishna is another one. Like we found Lord Krishna with several people. Krishna came in to visit during a clearing once, and it was really beautiful. I told you guys that story a few months ago where I was just kind of chatting with Zach, and all of a sudden I got chills like head to toe. And he said, "Oh, you've got somebody standing behind you." And I was like, "What?" My ears started ringing like crazy, and I'm like, "Who is it?" And he's like, "It's Lord Krishna. He's playing a flute in your ear right now." And I was like, "Holy shit." And he said he put a white flower in my hair, and I was like, thank you so much. And then 2 minutes later I started sneezing like crazy. I had like a sneezing fit. And Zach started laughing at me in my sneezing, and I was like, why am I sneezing like crazy? And Zach is like, oh, it's the flower, it's making you sneeze. It's really funny. So face Lord Ganesha towards your door. There we go. I usually have Lord Shiva facing my door for good reason. The Lizzies can't stand Lord Shiva, just for the record. Out of all the people to call in, when you're dealing with Lizzies, Lord Shiva, he's the one you want to call in. He's popped into our practice sessions too. I'm pretty sure Zach and Lord Shiva are friends. I'm just saying. The number of Andromedan gods that tend to come in and touring our sessions, I don't think it's a coincidence. But honestly, though, you know, have you guys ever seen Nepali? Am I saying it wrong? It is, according to the Tegetans, it's still 90% accurate to Andromedan language. So I'll show you what it looks like. It's such a beautiful language. Just to show you an idea of what it looks like. It looks like Elvish to me. That's Nepali writing. That is Andromedan. That is alien language right there. It is still 90% accurate. So if you look up Nepali language, Nepali handwriting, you'll see that is Andromedan handwriting. Yeah, they put him outside of CERN as kind of like, it's kind of like, please don't hurt us. So what I'm guessing. It was put there as a sign of respect, but really I think that's what it boiled down to, is being like, you know, we're putting a statue here. Don't destroy this, please. Because they absolutely still respect these beings. How could you not? Considering how powerful they are. It reminds me of an elven language. Yep. Same with Welsh. I'm pretty sure Welsh was also an alien language. Just saying. Like, if you look at Welsh language, it looks like Elvish too. It does make me want to learn it, though. I'm just saying. Like, I imagine it's very challenging as a language, and I have no time to do it, but I would still like to, just to be able to do that. What alien race were the most Egyptian gods? Those were Syrians. The ones from Sirius, the Irma and the Syrians were the most prominent galactics in Egypt. Queen Nefertiti, she was absolutely Syrian. Sirius A, by the way, Sirius A. There's Sirius B and C as well. Sirius B is the cetaceans. And some of the Sirius C is where African people came from. A lot of people from Sirius A and C. So you know how you get like the lighter skinned Africans up by Egypt? Those were Sirius A. And those more southern, that was Sirius C. There's a lot of other intermingling races that came through there, obviously. There was a lot of different races that came through there. But yeah, they were the ones that built Egypt, the Syrians. Sekhmet, Bastet, both Irma. Yep, exactly. There was a lot of Irma back in the day in Egypt. That's why there were so many ancient gods that had like cat heads. That's actually inaccurate though. They're not like half human, half cat. They're just cat. They're just 100%. Which Sirius planet was water? That is Sirius B. Sirius B is where the cetacean races come from. Dolphins and whales, orcas, that sort of thing. They're all from Sirius B. You know what's really cool about them is that they've evolved their consciousness to be shapeshifters. So the more evolved Sirius B, they can choose to be a whale or a dolphin, or they can take a human form when they're using their ships. Because I did ask that. I'm like, how, like, is there like a whale piloting a spaceship somewhere? Like, how did the whales leave Sirius B and then come to Earth? I'm just curious about that. And they're like, oh, they were shapeshifters. In higher vibrational dimensions, they still are. Where did our water come from? That's from Tiamat. Tiamat was the twin planet to Earth that was destroyed and is now part of our asteroid belt. All of that water came from Tiamat. Same with Venus. A lot of the water from Tiamat went to Venus as well. Mintaka was a mermaid planet that was in Orion. Mintaka is from Orion. Ariana says, thank you for the visual of a whale flying a spaceship. I did wonder, like, how did the whales get here if they're aliens technically? Well, they shapeshifted and took human form before they came here. And then with the consciousness level, the planet dropping, they were no longer able to shapeshift. So the ones that came here couldn't, as soon as they became whales, they didn't change. Although some of them, you know what I mean? Like you do get lesser subspecies of things. Like you see tigers and lions running around, but you don't see them standing up on their hind legs and talking. So you wonder how you have the lions and tigers and then how they evolved to being an Irma, where they're able to use weapons and fly spaceships and shit. And you're like, okay, how did we get from chasing gazelles to flying spaceships? Well, millions of years of evolution. That's how. On a different planet. So you do get subspecies that are less evolved. I mean, if you look at the mantises that are running around here, if you find a praying mantis outside your house, it's not the same kind of praying mantis that you're going to find, you know, on Mars, for example. They are 7-8 foot tall. So you get the lesser evolved versions and you get the higher evolved versions. Kara says, yes, one of my energy work guides is a whale from Sirius B. She shapeshifts into a beautiful woman with black hair and blue clothes. And I could sense her, and Adriana told me what she looks like. That's beautiful. They're very profound healers, by the way. If you need healing, one of the most healing things you can do is play whale song. So if you're trying to relax and trying to focus on healing, playing whale songs into it's like binaural beats. I'm telling you, they do really, it's the healing frequency. They naturally emit it. So this is one of the reasons why, you know, they talk about certain areas being more high vibrational for healing and stuff like that. And sure enough, there's dolphins and whales in the area. Triada says, are the mantises malevolent? Not all of them. Some of them are and some of them aren't. Some of them are very beautiful. In fact, some of them are very high vibrational, very loving, very intelligent. So yeah, there's a lot of very good mantis people out there too. In fact, they're extremely technologically advanced. But no, the ones that we tend to find around people are not nice. No. In fact, you know what's interesting? There was this one client that messaged me and she said her hubby was working on an experiment in the backyard. And after a couple of days, this experiment, he started to have really loud ringing in the ears to the point where it was deafening. And he didn't know where, like, it wouldn't stop. And the deafening sounds were really bothering him. And he went to all kinds of specialists, hearing specialists. And it would, like, certain periods, it would be more quiet. And then other periods, it would get really, really loud to the point where he couldn't even hear people speaking to him. And he was wondering why. And guess what I found on him when I went to do a clearing? That little experiment that he was doing in the backyard called in the attention of some mantises in the area. And the mantises came in and attacked. And they were just kind of keeping an eye. They weren't bad. They weren't good. They were just kind of curious. And they ended up causing so much confusion. And just being in that area is what caused that ringing sound in his ear, that deafening sound in his ears. And he said it even sounded like chittering, like, and he was wondering like why it sounded like this weird chittering noise. They were talking, and he could hear them talking. Can you imagine hearing like weird sounds in your head, and you find out, oh, it's just some aliens down the street that are curious about what you've been doing in your backyard? This planet's a lot weirder than we've been led to believe. So anyway, we have 15 minutes, and I'm going to go and do some adulting before we get ready for Chasing Beasties with Carolyn. I will see you guys at 1 p.m. Eastern time. I'm very excited about the Losel Rescue today. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to hold on to those until class. And I will chat with you guys then. And I will see you, the rest of you, on Monday. I hope you all have a magical weekend. I love you guys, and have an amazing day today. Make sure you don't do anything stupid with fireworks, please. Stay grounded. Mwah. Love you all. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.